thought about the concept of God, or is there a God? Who is God? If there is a God, what does that mean? Hi, my name is Jeff Reynolds from the United States. I'm working in journalism and farming. Especially I grew up in a very secular world where religion was not a big part of our lives. So we just kind of believed in the scientific approach and the material things that are in front of us, and that was it. When I was 15 years old, my mother had passed away, and that started making me think about the afterlife. But also at that time, I was very hurt at the fact that my mother passing away at such a young age, and with my already atheistic tendencies at that time, I really did not believe at God anymore, thinking that my mom suffered from cancer, and I suffered as a teenager having to deal with losing his mother. And if God is so loving and merciful, then how could He create a world in which such things happen? Then I eventually started learning Arabic and moved to Egypt, and still had a bit of a spiritual aspect of myself, I knew, even though I didn't consider myself religious at the time. So I wanted to start to learn more about different religions, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, everything pretty much. In secular society, we really didn't think about God at all. Obviously there's just kind of this cultural, maybe word, phrase that comes up in certain times, and then there was the aspect of church, but we never really thought about the concept of God, or is there a God? Who is God? And that was my natural tendency at the time, was pretty much leaning in that direction, that God Himself is beyond anything that we can imagine, beyond anything in creation, and that our life here is basically going on the path back, trying to get to God, to experience God outside of this material world. When I was in that atheist period, the other aspect that I was looking at much was the idea of human suffering. The fact that there was pain, disease, experienced by people all throughout the world, war, hunger, starvation, poverty. Even though I didn't necessarily experience a lot of those, I had experienced the aspect of death from the passing of my mother. And the pain of that, but when you really start to look at it deeply, there's wisdom behind a lot of the things that happen. I was very upset or sad, and not knowing what to do with life, or not knowing if there was a purpose to life. But now looking back, I realized that at those times, it was guiding me towards something else along in my path, in my life, guiding me towards something better, and trying to guide me and bring me back to God. Because ultimately this life is just, God created it with the purpose of us being guided back to Him. Every little thing that happens in our lives is just a step pushing you towards that direction, back towards God. So oftentimes, when we see these negative things happening in life, it's just God trying to push us back, saying, come back to me, come back to me. This material world, it's an illusion. It doesn't really mean anything. Just come back to me. I would consider a patriot, and I wanted to go in the military as a child. My grandfather had served in the military. And then in my teenage years, I got very heavily into politics, and I went to college to study politics. And delving into the political aspect of the West, in my case specifically America, and reading the Founding Fathers documents, and reading the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, to me, I found largely that what America in the beginning was trying to strive for was essentially Islam. They just didn't know it at the time. So probably like one of the main aspects that made me become Muslim was the realization of the fact that that there is one God, and that there is a supreme being, and that ultimately is His will that's what happens. Seeing aspects of my life that at the time I may not have liked, but there was a purpose behind them. It was, there was a guide that was guiding me to something else, and that's all from God's plan. My belief, it's God then guided me to Islam, of following the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as the guide and messenger of how to do that, of how to be a human being and how to worship God. That it's ultimately the Prophet ﷺ who is the ultimate guide towards that in life. I became Muslim after a few years after my mother had passed away, and I moved to Egypt to go to college and studied Arabic, and started reading books as well on Islam, and trying to learn more about the religion and about some of the early Muslims from the time of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. And I eventually came to the point where I believed that Islam was the truth. So once I realized that there was only one God, then I realized that that all I should be focusing on is God. The idea of Islam being against human development is absolutely absurd, especially when you look at the history, and Muslims had been at the forefront of progress since the foundation of Islam. And you look at cities like Basra, Baghdad, Cairo, Damascus, and Andalus, and Islamic Spain. And these places were very well advanced for their time, while Europe was in what we call the Dark Ages. Definitely Islam is more fair than atheism. I mean, one of the aspects of Islam is to promote fairness, and one of God's attributes is that He is just, and He wills that which is just. So Islam in its very nature is fair, whereas atheism is going against the rights of God, and oftentimes against the rights of creation, which is the opposite of justice and the opposite of fairness. My message to Muslims is to learn your religion, because it's not enough to just be a Muslim by name. You know, Islam is not a passive religion. The very word itself in Arabic is an active verb, so it means it's something that you have to do. You are submitting yourself to God, placing your in God. And the only way you can do that is through knowledge. And then also to, you know, not only learn it, but then put it into practice, what you learn. You know, it's not just enough to, again, say that I'm Muslim and to even truly believe it if we're not walking that path and spreading Islam in our everyday lives with those around us, in the means of being just with people, being friendly with people, having mercy upon people, and so forth.